today we're gonna start off triangle congruency with a lesson on corresponding parts of congruent triangles. Corresponding, so if we're gonna talk about corresponding parts, it's corresponding sides and corresponding angles. So given two triangles, if I tell you that these two triangles are congruent, we can match up pairs of sides and pairs of angles that correspond or match each other because they are congruent. So in this diagram, I've given you triangle ABC and triangle DEF, and I'm going to tell you that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. Okay, so make a quick note here if you don't know this already, that this symbol, it's an equal sign with a little squiggle on top, that is the symbol for congruent. And congruent means that they are exactly the same. So if I pair up the sides and say that this side is congruent to another side, that means that they are the same size. And for angles, they're the same size as well. So the sides are the same length. The angles are the same, like width, I guess you would say. And every single pair of congruent triangles has 3 pairs of sides and 3 pairs of angles that are congruent. Okay, when we have these triangles, the easiest thing to do is to mark them to say which angle is congruent to which by those marks. So the way that I do it is I like to label my angles first and start with A and then B and then C in the order that they're listed. Order does matter here. So A is my first angle, so I'm just going to put a little angle mark in there, just a single one. And then for B is the second one, I'm going to put 2 marks there. And then C is the last one, so that gets 3 marks. So I have my first angle, my second angle, my third angle listed by the order that they're written in their triangle statement. We can also mark the sides. So A to B is the first one, so I give that 1 mark. And then B to C is the next 2, so that gets 2 tags, little hash marks, and then the last side gets 3. So now when I go in and mark those same angles in that same order for the second triangle DEF, I'll be able to see how they match up. So same thing, D gets 1 because it is the first, and then E gets 2, and F gets 3. And then when I mark my sides, D to E is my first side, E to F is my second side, and then F to D is my third side. And so now I can see how these triangles relate to each other and which parts are congruent to which based on these markings that I've listed out. So let's start by listing our corresponding angles first. I find the angles to be easier to list out first off, because they're just written in order. So you can see that angle A only has 1 mark and angle D has 1 mark. So angle A is congruent to angle D, but you can also tell because they're both the first letter in our triangle statements, which means that the middle letter, so angle B, is congruent to angle E. And you can see that in the diagram because B has 2 angle marks and E has 2 angle marks. And then the last set is angle C is congruent to angle F. And so this is where it comes in that the order that you write your letters for your triangle statements does matter because the first letters have to correspond, the second letters and the third letters respectively. Okay, we can also match these up with their corresponding sides. And you can see the sides are clearly marked in the diagram, but writing them out is only a little bit more difficult because when you write a side, you have to have 2 letters and they have to have their little mark over the top. So when we write this, our first side is this here, and you have to list it with these 2, so A and B. So I would write it as AB with the little line over the top of it. So that is side AB is congruent to. Now we know that it's this side that it's congruent to, but the letters have to match up. So since we wrote A, then B, A corresponds to D, and then E, so we have to write it as D to E. So side AB is congruent to side DE. You could write these in the different order. You could say BA is congruent to ED, but again, the letters have to match. So if you're going to write one of them backwards, you have to write the other one backwards as well. So they have to be matching. For our second side, and I like to follow this. So we did A to B. Now I'm going to do B to C. So side BC is congruent to, and if we're using the triangle statement, it would be EF. And then for the last one, I do last letter to first letter. So that would be side CA congruent to side FD. It's easy to mark them. It's a little bit harder to write out the pairs, but with practice, I mean, it's really not terrible. Okay, I'm going to show you 2 examples of some of the stuff that we're going to practice today so that we can prepare for our lessons tomorrow. So for example 1, I'm going to give you these triangles. They're not going to be drawn to scale, so they're not necessarily going to look like they are congruent, but they are. Okay, so here is our first, and I'm going to give you the statement, triangle LMN is congruent to triangle PQR. And for this problem, your instruction is to label all corresponding sides and angles. So that's where we up here put all of the little markings on the sides and markings in the angles. So I would like you to pause the video, take a moment to mark all of your angles and sides in your triangles, and then you can come back and check your answers. Okay, let's take a look at this. So I'm going to label my angles first. So L, then M, then N. So L's first, then M, then N. And then I have P, Q, and R. So P is first, then Q, then R. Then I will label my sides in the same way. So L to M is first, M to N is second, and then that's third. And then P to Q is first, Q to R is second, and then that leaves R to P last. So you're going to have a couple of practice problems like this where you just have to mark them and you just pay attention to the order that your letters are in, and it should be pretty simple. Okay, for our second example, shift this down a little bit. So for our second example, I'm going to give you 2 triangles that have been marked, and I want you to write this statement of congruency. And so the order is going to be very, very important. And just because they look congruent, I would not immediately assume that you can tell based on looking at them. I'm not very good at drawing congruent triangles. So So here is our diagram for example 2. And I would like you to write a congruency statement, and that is going to look like triangle something is congruent to triangle something, and you have to match up the letters. So take a moment to go do that, pause the video, and then come back and you can check your work. Okay, when I do this, I like to look at the angle markings in order. So I start with the first one, then go to the second one, then the third one. So in order, that would be triangle FDE, congruent to F matches with Q, because they both have one mark, and then D matches with R, and then E matches with S. So triangle FDE is congruent to triangle QRS. Okay, there's only one more type of example that I'd like to show you, and then you can go and do your practice work. So in the last example, I'm going to give you a diagram. It will be fully marked. I'm going to give you the triangle statement, and then I'm going to ask you to complete a congruency statement. So here's what this is going to look like. So here are my two triangles. I have ABC and LMN. So triangle ABC is congruent to triangle LMN. Here are your markings. And I want you to complete the statement. Side length AC is congruent to what? Now when I do these problems, A is here and C is there, so the side length is this. It's A to C. So it's my triple side, which matches with this side here, but the order needs to be written correctly. So we have to see what letter matches with A and then what letter matches with C. So A matches with L and C matches with N. So my proper side length is side LN to match with AC. You could also do it by angles only. So I could ask like angle B is congruent to what? And we would know that that's angle M because they're both marked with two tags, or B is in the middle and M is in the middle, so they're in the same order. And that's it.